All right, let's talk about the absolute heart of programming. Every single program out there, whether it's a simple app on your phone or some massive complex game, it's all built from just a handful of simple ideas. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and look at those fundamental building blocks. So forget all the complicated stuff for a minute. We're getting down to the essentials. Let's jump in.
So let me start by asking you this. When you're playing a game, how in the world does it remember your score from 1 second to the next? Or when you log into a website, how does it know your username? Seriously, how does a computer program remember anything at all? That's the big secret we're about to unlock.
And the answer is surprisingly simple. It's this thing called a variable. At its core, it's just a name that we use to store a piece of information. The best way to picture it? Think of a labeled box. You slap a label on it, you put something inside, and now the computer knows where to find it. That's it. That is literally the foundation of how programs keep track of stuff.
And you know what the best part is? Python makes this incredibly easy. All you do is come up with a name for your box, use a single equals sign, and then tell it what you want to put inside. Just like you see here. The name goes on the left and the value, the stuff you're storing, goes on the right. That's it. No complicated commands, just variable name equals value. It's clean, it's simple, and it's so powerful.
Okay, so we've got our labeled boxes, or variables. But what can we actually put inside them? Well, it turns out our information comes in a few different flavors, and each one has its own special purpose. Let's take a quick look at the 4 most common types you're going to run into. First up, we've got the integer, or just int for short. This is your classic whole number. Think about anything you can count. The number of likes on a post, your level in a game, or maybe the year you were born. If it's a whole number, positive or negative, it's an integer. And here's a perfect, simple example. We've made a box, we've labeled it age, and we've put the integer 25 inside. Easy as that. The computer now knows that age is 25 until we decide to change it. But, whole numbers aren't always enough, right? For that, we have floats. A float is basically any number that has a decimal point. This is absolutely crucial for anything that needs precision. We're talking measurements, scientific data, and of course, money. And you see this everywhere in the real world. A variable like price is set to $19.99. You just couldn't store that accurately with an integer, which is exactly why floats are so essential for everything from your online shopping cart to complex financial models.
Now, of course, programs don't just deal with numbers. To handle any kind of text, we use what's called a string. A string is just a bunch of characters, letters, numbers, symbols, whatever, all wrapped up inside quote marks. Think usernames, messages, titles, they're all strings.
Just like this. We've created a variable called message and stored the sentence "Welcome to Python" inside of it. And those quote marks, they're super important. They're the signal that tells Python, hey, treat everything in here as plain old text.
And last but not least, we have the simplest, but maybe the most powerful data type of all, the Boolean. A Boolean can only ever be one of 2 things, true or false. That's it. Think of it like a light switch. It's either on or it's off. These are the absolute bedrock of decision-making in all of programming. For example, you could have a variable called isOnline set to true when a user is logged in. This simple state lets the program decide what to do next. You've seen this a million times. That little green dot next to a username, that's a Boolean at work. So we've got our boxes, and we've filled them with different kinds of data. Integers, floats, strings, and Booleans. That's a great start, but just storing information doesn't really do anything. The real magic happens when we start making that data interact with each other. So let's see how we can put this stuff to work. This is where the fun begins. We can use these operators to do math with our number variables. Now, Python knows all the basics, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, but check out those last few on the table. Floor division gives you just the whole number part of a division, and the remainder operator tells you what's left over. These two are surprisingly powerful for solving all kinds of tricky problems. Now, what's really cool is that the plus sign is kind of smart. With numbers, it adds them, but with strings, it just smooshes them together. This is called concatenation. So as you can see here, we can take a first name string, add a last name string, add a little space in the middle, and join them all into one full name. Okay, so we know how to make variables and how to use them. But what if we need to be a little more flexible? What if we have a number, but we need to treat it like text, or vice versa? Or what if we just forget what kind of data is in our box? Let's look at a couple of essential tools for that.
This idea has a fancy name, type conversion, or sometimes you'll hear it called casting.
But really, all it means is changing a value from one data type into another. It's an incredibly useful trick that lets us make different kinds of data work together.
And this is a perfect example of how it works. Let's say we have the float 3.14159. If we convert it to an integer using int, Python doesn't round it. It just straight up truncates it. It just chops off everything after the decimal point, leaving us with 3. That's a really important detail to remember, because you do lose that precision.
Here are a few of the most common conversions you'll do all the time. You can turn an integer into a float to get a decimal, or a number into a string so you can display it. You can even turn a string that looks like a number back into a number. But, and this is a big but, look at that caution at the bottom. You can't just convert any random text into a number. Trying to turn ABC into an integer is going to break things, and for good reason.
So, with all this converting going on, how do you keep track of what's actually in your boxes? Well, Python gives us this awesome little built-in tool called the type function. You can hand it any variable you want, and it'll tell you exactly what data type it's holding. It's like being able to peek inside the box anytime you want.
And using it is super simple. If we make a variable and then ask Python, hey, what's the type of name? It spits back class string. That's just Python's formal way of saying, yep, that's a string. This little function is an absolute lifesaver when you're trying to figure out why your code isn't behaving the way you expect.
Okay, we have covered a ton of ground here. We went all the way from creating our first variable to understanding the 4 main flavors of data, and even how to change them around. So let's just boil all of this down into one clear final summary.
This slide right here, this is your cheat sheet. These are the 4 fundamental building blocks we've been talking about. We've got int for whole numbers, float for decimal numbers, string for any kind of text, and bool for those simple true or false values. If you can keep these 4 straight in your head, you have the absolute core foundation you need to understand how data works in Python.
And that pretty much brings us to the end. I mean, everything you see in an application, every single thing, is just built on these simple ideas, storing and manipulating these different kinds of data. So the question isn't just about what you learned today. It's about what you can do with it. You've got the building blocks now. So what are you going to build first?